Welcome everyone. Happy Halloween. Today talking about from clicks to conversions, and specifically web optimization for insurance specifically. Um, my name is Jake Lambert. I'm head of conversion services here at Fresh Egg. We work with a whole host of insurers from RD, Agra, Aegeus, definitely working our way through the phone book in terms of that. But yeah, very happy to talk to you all today.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Stuart Rex, and when I'm not negotiating toddlers not stabbing people with spoons, I'm the commercial director for Webtrends Optimize. We are experimentation platform. We work very closely with the Fresh Egg team, who utilize our tool to build some of their amazing tests. And hopefully today you'll see some kind of inspiration on ways that their team have utilized the product to deliver some really exceptional results for our shared customers.
Yeah, talking of amazing tests. Yeah, very happy with a lot of the results that we've driven, particularly over the past couple of years itself. On average, a winning experiment for us has an uplift of around 5%, which is obviously very high. Of the experiments that we run, 1 in 3 generate significant uplift. So you can see how lots of 5% add on to each other and compound over time to generate some really significant gains for our insurance clients. For perspective, a recent state of experimentation report said that an average CRO program has around a 12% win rate. So we're almost triple that, which we're very proud of, and like to point out at every chance that we can get. Largely due to the expertise that we have within this insurance specific industry, the vast amount of data that we have and experiments that we've run within it, and the research and insights that come off the back of it. And it's allowed us to win 3 awards over the past year for our work in insurance specifically, which we're very happy about. And alongside Webtrends Optimize, we've optimized 40 insurance and finance websites, with which some you can see some of the logos on the screen there. Over 10,000 experiments run within this industry through the Webtrends Optimize platform. So very proud of our results, and consider ourselves to be leaders in insurance optimization.
Yeah, I'd back that up.
Nice to hear. What I'm going to do is kick off with a bit of a story. Excuse my rambling here, Stu, but I want to paint a bit of a picture. So as an industry, we spend millions on branding, making sure we stand out from the crowd, looking at pricing algorithms and making sure that we're really competitive, optimizing to the extent we can the USPs that we have within aggregators and price comparison websites itself. We work really hard to get that click from an aggregator itself. And they arrive on our website, and our website looks like this. This is the experience that they are landed with. A table. If we're lucky, we might have a few different comparisons there, a few ticks, which are always nice, but it's quite bland. And I'm not picking on this template itself, although it sounds like I am. This is common across a wide range of insurance itself. Very black and white, or blue and white if you're lucky here. A bit of green splashed in, but very much, here's a table. What price do you like? Go, crack on. And there's a bit of a, misconception that insurance is purely a pricing decision. And we've got a lot of data to suggest that it's not. An example of that, of what you can do, is here with Aegeus. So actually telling that brand story and increasing awareness from that aggregator itself increased their quote to sale by 3%. And there are 3 core things that we did with this. We brought the brand to life through imagery, in particular, which you can see on the right-hand side. We looked at the USPs. We brought 3 of those out that are unique to Aegeus, but pretty strong within the industry itself. And then we highlighted their Trustpilot rating, which was really strong. And those things combined tells a bit of a story about the brand itself. So that if a user struggles or wobbles, they don't go back to compare the market in this example. They stay on the website and try and persist because they're bought a little bit more into what the brand represents and what they're going to get out of it. And that alone was worth over £2.5 million per year to Ageas itself. And this in particular was a key driver for those awards themselves. So when thinking about not just the price comparison website journey, although we know that motor in particular, but also home is dominated by that journey for brands, there are 5 core things that we really do need to consider to make sure that we've got a positive customer experience for those outside of just the number that you're giving them in terms of price. So the first one, which I'll touch on shortly, is recognition and trust. User has to trust you in order to be confident buying. Familiarity is a big one. So if you're doing something completely unique where a user might get confused, that's going to make the journey very, very difficult for them to persist through. If you're doing something unique that could be groundbreaking, absolutely test it and figure out whether it works, because that's where you're going to get massive uplifts, but you're also going to get big barriers and falls in conversions. And that's the beauty of testing, right? When you get the big uplift that's groundbreaking, you can take all of that market share, so to speak, and put it live. And if it doesn't work, you just turn it off. Amazing. So yeah, making sure that things are familiar to the user as they go through the journey and they understand the terminology within that. Price transparency, particularly with add-ons, is very, very important. Consumer duty has helped a lot in this space to make sure that's out there, but we do still see what a user might perceive as a hidden cost associated. So making sure that we're really transparent there, because if they've made a decision for a pricing reason to come onto the website, and then you're not, particularly if you're not talking to them and giving them other reasons to stay, as soon as there's a bit of friction there, they're going to go back to the aggregator and go to someone else. Another reason they might go back to an aggregator is if they can't edit in the journey. If they made a mistake or they need to make a change, they need to be able to do that on your website through your experience. You've got them there, keep them there and make sure that they can go. And something Stu will touch on a bit further as well is relevancy and how we can personalize the journey for users throughout the journey to make sure that it is as relevant as possible and as unique to them as possible, so that we're speaking to them and not just a mass audience within that.
And I think, Jake, you sort of alluded to it. We've talked about this being a price comparison website problem, but this is actually just 5 good principles, regardless of where your traffic's coming from. All of these things do apply. I think that the slight nuance when traffic does come from price comparison websites is that there's sort of an investment already been put in to get that traffic over, and then if these trust markers and these factors aren't there, they're very good reasons to go and disappear. But similarly, if you've used paid traffic, for example, that click's going to have cost you a fair amount to get someone into the page, and if those markers aren't there, you've got a leaking sieve straight off the bat.
Yeah, no one likes a leaky sieve.
Not at all.
Within that. So I said I'd build on the recognition and trust part. So in terms of building trust and authority, there's 2 big things I want to talk to you about here. But before I do, just a quick statement, and it should be obvious, but it's something that we need to keep in mind all the time. If a user trusts the insurance company to honor their commitments, they will buy more policies. It's something that when we've tested trust signals and messaging, we see that time and time again, that not only conversion increases, but the overall lifetime value of those customers can increase as well in terms of the add-ons that they purchase, but also the likelihood of purchasing other products with you as well, particularly if they have a good experience from there. So definitely keep that front of mind. For a new user, how do you build that trust in particular, or someone that might not be as familiar for you? And a quick way, if you can, is using authority bias. So external rankings and ratings like de facto, like Which, any awards that you may have won within there, whether that's for the online experience or for your customer service, for example, all of those are really important to the user, and they build trust in not only the product, but you as a brand as well. And we've seen there's a couple of examples there of increases of 4%, of 2.8%, increase in overall conversion and to the bottom line through placing these at the right point in the user journey. And that's also really important. A lot of brands may have all of these on the homepage and then never mention them again. But actually putting them at the point where a user's going to have friction. For example, there might be a long form that you need for compliance purposes, but actually adding these as motivational factors for users to get through to remind them why they should be purchasing with you, why they shouldn't go for or try for an easier experience itself. These authority bias factors are crucial in getting that conversion, and putting them at the right place at the right time can have a real big impact on conversion.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of building on that, Jake, we as humans, we want to know that the products and services we're buying are for people like us. You want the reassurance that the company's credible. You can have those from some of those earlier trust markers. But really simple things, we talk a bit about safety in numbers, but really simple things here, like in this example, if I was purchasing this policy from Everguard, the picture of the two people in the banner, they don't look like me. They look like my grandparents. So I'd look at that and instantly, subconsciously think, well, is this actually the product for me, or should I be looking elsewhere? The beauty that you've got within insurance that you don't really have a lot of the time in retail or in many of the other sectors is that you've captured a huge wealth of demographic data up front, and the ability to kind of personalize on this, which we'll be coming on to later on in this talk, is sort of near endless. But what we need to be thinking about here is not social proof as in the way that X people have bought this policy in the last Y period of time. It's much more about recognizing yourself in the product you're purchasing. Is this the right fit for me? It's a considered purchase for many, and as Jake said, price is no longer the only determining factor, and that sort of changes for people throughout their life and depending on their circumstances. But if you know the kind of product you've got, why people are buying, and you can do some very basic social proofing and things like those de facto markers, your Trustpilot. As Jake said, deploying those at the right point in the journey can have some significant results for people. So something, if you're not doing it today, have a chat to myself or Jake, and we can talk you through how we've utilized those throughout journeys in the past.
Yeah, there's a big misconception, again, as you said, that social proofing is only for travel. I'm booking a train ticket and I've need scarcity to warn me that things are running out, or retail where it's X amount bought in the last bit. But there's so many different applications that are relevant for insurance that helps build on that personalization piece.
Absolutely. I mean, at the very extreme end, and probably not really one to go into detail on today, but that same data that you'd use to power those banners can also be used to remerchandise the products on your site. So if we know that there are periods in your annual calendar where people are buying more home insurance than they are motor insurance, or they're buying travel insurance or whatever it might be, we can prioritize those higher and test whether prioritizing those higher on the homepage or in other aspects of the site is going to have a benefit. And as I said, much more advanced use cases, but for the same data that powers those little bubbles of X people bought Y in the last Z period of time can help you to completely remerchandise the way your site appears. But we'll come on to some more about that later.
Yeah, talking of later, on personalization.
It's not much later, is it? So we thought really we'd sort of do a bit of a section on personalization. Now, what we see or have seen historically is that insurance has been a long way behind where some of the other verticals that we work with are. And Jake and I have had quite a long conversation about this, and we believe it's because there's a misconception that personalizing is really hard, and that you've got to be doing an all singing, all dancing program in order to run a personalized experience. And basic personalization is very easy to do straight off the bat, and we're going to cover some of the things that you can do there. I think the other big objection that we hear is that, well, when I am personalizing, we're going to have to constantly change the product. We've got to iterate based on all of these different personas, audiences, demographics, products. The problem is just almost too big to go and tackle. And what we find is that, the people who go and pick one product, they pick one vertical, they pick one category, one journey, they pick one demographic, they pick somewhere to start, they can then go and see where those opportunities are. And actually with, this isn't a case study in here, and I'm going to cover a bit more on this side in a minute, but with, did some work a long time ago with Lloyd's Insurance for home insurance. And we found that people of an older demographic were really struggling with one of their core products there. What we were able to do was track where the friction points in that journey were. And then by using a live chat intervention based on the demographic data they provided up front, we were able to have someone talk to them and help them through that process. We triggered that through Webtrends Optimize, so they didn't have to hard code that into the platform, and they didn't have to completely redesign that form. So you can run that as an ongoing thing in perpetuity. I can't speak, you know what I mean. And it's something that now, instead of redesigning the complete form, which was the initial feeling of the team, they were able to just triage that problem and personalize to those people and get more people that were struggling through that process. And I guess really the point here is that, had they not tested that solution and found that worked, they would have believed that they needed to rebuild that form and then hard code every experience. But actually, the perception was it's just not worth the time. We can't afford to do it. To rebuild those forms is months of work. And we sort of said, well, why don't we try this? And they were able to then see a huge uplift for that audience and demographic. And the quote that we sort of had here was, it's not always worth the time, but it is worth the uplift for that audience or segment. The damage that you can cause by having large friction points for those people versus the relative effort and cost to solve that problem is disproportionate. So just something to have in the back of your minds, where you are seeing, there's a demographic that's struggling, there's a product that, we don't believe is selling as well as it should. There can be some really eloquent solutions, and it's just about being creative and looking at how those can be done, and not necessarily thinking this is months of work to go and build those.
Yeah, I think something like this, whether it's demographic based or pet based or whatever, it's very easy and simple to do in a Webtrends Optimize, but very difficult to do through a CMS or hard coding itself, particularly at the rate of iteration that you will go through as you start testing for segments and testing for messaging around that, and bearing that in mind. The uplifts that you can get are pretty huge, but it's really hard to sustain if you're constantly having to build it and put it into dev queues around that.
Exactly. So the other bit, we sort of touched a bit earlier on aggregators, and what we thought we'd show here is how easy it can be to do some basic paid media continuation. So I'm fortunate to have an old dog. He's quite old. He's 10. And so I thought I'd do a quick Google search for old dog insurance. I've given you in that search term a fair bit of information. Had I searched for old Labrador insurance or 10-year-old Labrador insurance, and if you had your paid tracking set up correctly, you'd get a lot of that information through into the UTM parameter, and then you can continue my journey with far more relevant results. I've told you I've got a dog. I've told you that he's old. I haven't told you he's a he actually at this point, but there's information that you can glean from that search term alone that can then get me further down the journey. We're not necessarily looking at what arriving on the page and what pet have you got, etc. If I turn up and I see, we're the #1 rated for cat insurance, well, that's just totally irrelevant to me. And that's the point where we see a lot of people exiting very quickly. So looking at those landing pages from your paid media, from other inbound traffic sources, and sort of just putting yourself in your customer's shoes and saying, if I've come in looking for this, does where I land make sense? And I'm going to give you an off insurance example here. Yesterday, I was doing some work with a sofa company. I searched for a product they were pushing, which is a mustard velvet sofa. Went through, at their request, one of their PPC links. I would never normally click those, just for your awareness. And it took me to a page encouraging me to look at their finance options. And what I actually wanted was a filtered set of results for mustard velvet sofas. So, don't assume that the way people land, you've paid a lot for that traffic. The relatively small amount of effort to serve them something relevant, again, is disproportionately advantageous. And a lot of the time what we see is people have built landing pages 3-4 years ago, they pump paid media into those and just hope it converts. And this is particularly for insurers where acquiring traffic is not cheap. This is a really good place to start if you're not currently personalizing.
Nice insight into your life there with your mustard sofa.
Not my mustard sofa, mate. It's this was an example for them. I'm not cool enough to have a mustard sofa.
I think that's even touching on that, like you would see in the sponsored term, like insurance for older dogs,
Yeah.
specialists in mustard sofas, type thing. But then we'll take them to a homepage, which
in this case, it wasn't even a homepage, Jake. It took me to a
No.
financing page, which is just totally irrelevant. So whoever set that page traffic up should really go and have a word with themselves. But the point is that that's a particularly bad example. But even the good examples are still not really where I, as a customer, would want to land on that page.
Yeah.
Or on that site, sorry, not on the page. So thought we'd do a little bit about what can you do when you know nothing about the customer. So obviously when you've got someone who you've got a profile for, you've either taken data over from the aggregator or the price comparison website, or you've got historical information available either through CRM, custom data platform, you've got information coming into your data layer from somewhere. There are more options. And I was kind of clicking around a few insurers yesterday just to see, who does an average job when they know nothing about me. And I stumbled across Haggerty, who, I've told them a little bit of information up front, and they suddenly personalize the experience to say, nice to meet you, John. Obviously, John is not my name, but it was my example name. And it then just kind of made me feel a little bit more reassured. What we really want to do is know where someone's began their journey and then try and make that journey feel immediately relevant. Now, Haggerty knew absolutely nothing about me yesterday. But in the example I gave earlier, where that I've got an old dog, we can talk about why we're, a really good insurer for people with old dogs. And you can make that journey immediately relevant for me. Now, Haggerty do policies for classic cars. And John was after some classic car insurance. Now, the nice thing about insurance, as I said earlier, is that the data that you collect is far richer than you will get with many other verticals. And people will very quickly exhibit behavior and reveal information about themselves. So whether that's location, whether it's demographic, you start building a very quick picture of this person. And then you can utilize that to trigger relevant add-ons. You can use it to trigger social proofing to show people like them. If John, in terms of his classic cars, if he drives an old Mini, we could show him a picture of an old Mini in the banner. If he drives a Land Rover, we could show him a Land Rover as an example. And also then, depending on, for Haggerty, depending on the value of the car, you might invite them into their drivers club, or you might invite them into some of the other products that they've got that are kind of relevant add-ons for their policies. But the crucial thing with all of this is these are lovely ideas, but with Webtrends Optimize, you're serving a control, a version of the page to a number of people, you're serving a variant to another number of people, and every initiative that you take is underpinned by statistics. So if you take nothing else from this call today, by putting any of these initiatives and wrapping them up into a test, you can very quickly justify whether that was worth or not worth doing. And that in itself to to be able to say we got a good return on investment on this idea and it's worth baking into the core platform, or actually that test made no difference at all, or we've protected ourselves from a bigger issue that we've seen here, is extremely useful. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail shortly.
Yeah, and that ties completely into the relevance point as the fifth thing to consider when we were speaking earlier, because often we'll talk about personalization, we'll talk about the imagery throughout a website needs to be relevant to the user there. And people kind of dismiss it as a nice to have, but you can measure whether it does have a conversion benefit to go through that. And we do find often that it does. Having that relevant imagery alongside unique USPs in particular can have a really strong impact from there, but you'll only know through measuring it.
So about to have a drink. I forgot I had another slide. So on the other piece that we've seen for cold users that can be really useful is guided selling. So I went yesterday to the Admiral site. I think it was the Admiral site, and we were just sort of asking people in a series of if we asked people in a series of natural language questions what they were looking for, we could massively reduce decision fatigue. And I know there are going to be insurers on here that are specialists, sort of single product insurers, and there'll be some that are here with a far broader offering. But to be able to ask someone a couple of questions, are you here today for car insurance, pet insurance, multi-cover insurance? What do you need from us? And then being able to guide them through and narrow down the information that's available on the site, put them into the right journey, can be super helpful. And again, if you've got kind of a cold user coming in, this sort of banner at the top to guide people into the right part of the site, much like you would if you went into a department store, someone will be there to help you, or the signs will be there to help you. It can be a much easier way of people finding that kind of end destination when they perhaps don't know the insurance lingo. You can talk to them in natural language, apply your own filtering in the background and drive them into those relevant experiences. But I think the crucial bit there is that you can kind of remove some of those irrelevant products. You can then serve different audiences, segments, and demographics quite quickly because they'll have told you a bit of information about them. And you can, where the website might need to speak in a slightly more professional tone, you can actually talk to people in their language using these kind of features and test whether that does have a positive or negative impact. Our experience is very largely positive when delivered well.
Yeah, and part of it is it gives you the opportunity to educate as well as they go through. We know that insurance, there's a big issue around customer understanding of excess. Customers are very dismissive of add-ons, but through something like guided selling, it gives you another opportunity to explain excess and how it works, to give users a narrowed down option for that. And also, again, point to relevant add-ons, which can then go into how you merchandise the add-ons page as they go through the quote and buy funnel. So having those things together can be huge.
Exactly that.
So I wanted to quickly touch on increasing conversion without developers. And the big thing here is we see small changes have a massive impact frequently. So an example that I've given here is around the copy within a CTA. Button color and button copy is quite often dismissed as a joke within the CRO industry. But CTA copy can be one of the biggest drivers of surprisingly large uplifts. So in the two examples given here, we've got a 4.9% increase in conversion, a 5.3% increase in conversion. I've seen it work the other way where we've had a 6% decrease in conversion by using the wrong copy. From there, we've got a test live that's currently plus 7%. Again, there's massive impacts that you can have just through copy and wording within that CTA and how it points people, and not testing that. You're leaving a lot of money on the table, or that money's already been swept off through incorrect copy itself. And there is no correlation between the complexity of a test and the potential value that it can drive. Massive misconception again that a big test is going to drive a big uplift. Actually, we see that there is just similar size uplifts, both big and small, across a whole range of different build sizes. So I did want to ask a question at this point. It's the set for the Q&A at the end, the only bit of audience interaction that I'm asking for. And I will launch a poll now. And what I'm going to ask is, when the last time, or within the last 6 months, have you built and launched an experiment that required under 4 hours of development? And I've asked it to be split out by agency and whether you're running an in-house CRO program, because I have a hypothesis here that you're more likely to run smaller experiments in-house than you are with an agency. So yeah, I've launched the poll. If I can ask you to give it a quick answer, would appreciate the feedback, but also it's very, very interesting to see.
Just while Jake's doing that and you're kind of filling those out, the other thing I think I would sort of mention here is, having someone objective go through your journeys, things like continue. It's a pretty clear what they're going to do, but what are they continuing to? Whereas when the next section is your car details, it becomes very clear what the person's expected to do. So setting those expectations of what the next steps in the journey can be really useful. And just something that, to have fresh eyes look at this, or fresh eggs, it can be a really really powerful option.
Amazing bit of
results. I'm not allowed to vote, apparently.
Cool. Well, we've got quite a few people coming in. Very interesting that the most popular answer is yes and in-house, but only one has said no. So that is good to hear. Yeah, keep that up and going with that. I'll end the poll now. From there,
no, it is really nice to see, because as you said, we know that there's no correlation between test complexity and the value of the outcome, but there is still a tendency for people to think we need to take really big swings to see big changes. And another really big thing to take away today is that isn't often the case. You can see some really good results here from very small changes, things that can be done within the visual editor of our tool by in-house teams. And what we typically see, just to kind of expand on this slightly, is a really good program has a combination of high complexity and low complexity tests. You've got things that need to be, bigger product features that want to be tested, or versus small copy, call to action, imagery changes, and combining kind of the skills of in-house teams and people that are, kind of in the tools with developer-led initiatives is kind of where we see the best programs. And that's not just in insurance, that's just across our whole customer base.
Yeah, definitely.
But well, doing the small tests, that's the main thing.
Yeah, a good blend of both is always good. So the final point that we want to talk about here, not just about conversion, but how can you boost revenue with add-ons as well. So going to go into a bit of theory here. So there's 2 bits of theory that I want to talk about. The first one is prospect theory, also known as loss aversion. So what we know is that customers, or humans in general, feel the pain from a loss twice as much as they will feel the benefit from a gain within itself. And if you couple that with insurance customers being generally risk averse, when they're weighing up optional extras, what they feel is the loss in their pocket immediately, rather than the potential gain, or even more the potential loss that they could suffer in the future. They're very, very focused on what is happening now, which is a loss in my pocket, and they feel that, which means there's a lot of work, again, to make users cross the line into an add-on and say, actually, yes, that is worthwhile for me. So add-ons in general are undervalued. And if we're not working really hard to present the actual gains and make sure that outweighs the immediate loss to my pocket, and that can be through framing of the benefits of RAC as an example here, but also the potential losses that you may suffer in the future, or the risks that come with not having this add-on. Putting those 2 together, you need to overcome that immediate loss, which again, we see a lot of add-ons won't portray in a way that is beneficial to what will be overall GWP, but also just the presentation of it and the language that's used can be very fact-based and transactional, rather than actually, this is why you need RAC cover. This is why you need legal protection, or anything around that. Final thing, I think you can touch on as well,
I'll do it.
insurance policy against putting the wrong thing away or experimentation.
Exactly that. So, I think this is sort of loosely tied in, because, you feel the value of a gain less than the pain of a loss. And I think when you're going through an experimentation program, Fresh Egg have got great results with 1 in 3 winners. That means that 2 in 3 either have no effect or have a negative impact. And being able to say to your business that, yeah, we're expecting this to be an ROI positive outcome, a bit like a gym membership. You get the benefit over the course of the membership and by using it, not just by signing up. And similarly with an insurance policy, it's there to make sure that you do protect yourself if there are issues. And we know that within an experimentation program, there are going to be things that feel like a good idea. They're well researched. They're proven out potentially in user testing, but when the tires hit the tarmac, they just don't convert, or they actually cause a negative impact. If you've gone and built these ideas into your core platform, and you then have to go and strip those out, you introduce fragility into the code, you cause delays in having to fully regression test when you pull things back out. Whereas if you've done this via experimentation, your insurance policy is that you can simply divert all traffic back to the control, and you just pause that test, archive it, and everyone's moved on. You've had no kind of long-term impact on your code base. But it doesn't always also mean that idea was the wrong idea. It could just be that implementation of that idea. So you might have gotten onto the right problem, but the wrong solution to that problem. So those losing tests, another part where it becomes an insurance policy is that you might be on the right idea for the problem you're solving, but the wrong idea for how to solve it. And you can then go and have another go at seeing whether you can find a better solution to that. Much like my example earlier with the forms, there was a problem with the forms. Do we rebuild the entire form? Actually, it's a small percentage of our overall customer base that's having issues here. Let's find a solution that's specific to them and is triggered based on their struggle, rather than completely redesigning the form to meet one edge case.
Yeah, and particularly when we think about insurance in general, the influence of compliance makes the industry risk averse, even in stuff where compliance isn't involved at all. It's the attitude that insurance as an industry tends to have, which means that tend to either do nothing, which means competitors or new market entrants can quickly rise up the ranks, and come in and grab market share, or grab who would have been your potential customers from there. Or we tend to stand back from tests that may be a bit risky within that, from there, which can have big gains. And that's, again, that big point of experiment. What works, you can build or serve to 100%. What doesn't work, you just turn off, and go from there. But yeah, the risk of doing nothing means that whenever you are doing something and you're not testing it, I mean, we've got a 33% win rate. Industry has a 12%. Let's call it 1 in 5 as a middle ground for well researched. That means 4 out of 5 of the things that you're doing won't work, which is why you see you ship loads of things, but your conversion rate stands still, as an example.
But it's also, for the people on this group, I feel, on this webinar, they're amongst those that are wanting to do something about it. And if you were to go and speak to your CFO at the start of the year and say, I'm basically going to take 4/5 of the year off because the things I'm going to do are going to make no difference, they're probably going to look at you quite rightly and say, that's absolutely insane. Whereas when you can say, but by introducing testing and wrapping testing initiatives around some of these ideas, or a testing wrapper around some of these initiatives, we can increase that win rate to 1 in 3. It becomes an absolute no-brainer to run these as a program. And if you're already doing that, congratulations. And if you're not, then we can always help.
Yeah, forget the 4-day work week. Let's bring in a 1-day work week.
Might
Let's
as
see how that
well.
works.
It's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, yeah, it is indeed. The next thing that I want to talk about in particular is the proximity principle. And really, when we talk about the dimensions that shape a website, clarity and simplicity really are key within it. And the way I'll explain this is if you think back to the days where cash was absolutely rife and you had loads of coins that you would put in a coin jar, and at the end of the year, just before Christmas for your shopping, you'll crack it open, you'll count up, and you'll see how much you've got in there. And if you're like me, you don't just go £1, £1.20, £1.22, £1.23, and try and add up from there. The first thing you do is you group things into similar categories. So you'll group all the pound coins if I've had a good year, all the 50p's, the 20p's, and so on. And then I'll count, okay, stacks of 10 if I've had a really good year. I'll be like, all right, £10, £20, 25 from there. And that same principle applies to how users view things online, in particular when we talk about add-ons. So if you have all your add-ons grouped together in a blur, users group that in their mind and they go, no, I don't want any add-ons. And they click no, or they'll go around and go, no, 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 no. I'm sure anyone who's watched any session recordings will see the absolute short amount of time users spend on an add-ons page, just clicking those and then going on from there. But actually, if you group them in a way that makes sense, so you have similar categories together, you use white space and design elements to break up the page, or even break it out into different pages if they're really, really different. Instead of saying no to all add-ons, users start considering the groups within itself. And not only that, they can then go yes to this one, no to this one, no to this one. It's easier for users to understand, which again adheres to consumer duty, which is massively important here. So grouping things in different ways can have a massive impact on what your overall GWP will be from there. And we've used principles like this with John Lewis Finance, now John Lewis Money, to increase add-on uptake by over half. So it's 50% here. And some of their core add-ons that they're looking to push, like home emergency cover, by 84% within it. And not only that, page progression also improves at almost a 10% increase due to that clearer hierarchy and users understanding more. So yeah, some of these layout changes, making sure the more profitable add-ons are towards the top, which again comes back to what Stu was saying in terms of how we merchandise this page. The more we know about a user, the more we can put the ones that are most relevant or most likely to buy at the top of the page itself. And then using that white spacing and labeling to highlight not only the add-ons and group them, but also optional extra benefits and making sure that these come through and that users do consider that rather than just a blanket, I don't want any, I'm going to scroll to the bottom and click next page from there.
And crucially, Jay, you can wrap that all up into a test and then you can prove an increase in average order value, or you can prove uptake by individual add-on. And then when you are reporting back to CFO and you say, right, we've run this initiative and actually, you know, we're targeted this year on improving add-ons, we're targeted on improving AOV, look at what those core metrics that you as teams are targeted on, and then, you know, you find ways of wrapping those into tests so that you can ensure that your own bonuses are secured by proving the value of what you've done with irrefutable ROI evidence.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? Nice, irrefutable ROI. So the final thing is a question we get asked all the time: what results should I expect from CRO? And unfortunately, I can't properly tell you without knowing a bit more about you specifically. There's no blanket answer of we will make £1 million for you, because if you're only doing £500,000, we're not going to triple the size of your business overnight. If you're doing billions, actually $1 million isn't that relevant to you. But what we do, both Fresh Egg and Webtrends Optimize combined, is based off your data and the insights that we have, we're able to forecast what impact we think we can drive for your experimentation program. And then through our end-to-end management of strategy and roadmap and the award-winning platform of Webtrends Optimize, we're able to guarantee those results. And when we talk about a guarantee, we're not just saying, look, yeah, we're going to drive £1 million. If we don't, at the end of the year, don't renew with us at that point. We're willing to put skin in the game. We work at half price for 4 months at a loss to both companies themselves to prove that we're able to hit the forecast that we say we do. So we will, work to a short-term forecast, guarantee that figure, and that figure will be based off what we think we can drive over 12 months. In order to be on track, we will be at X amount over 4 months. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, please do reach out to us. And like you say, we're very, very proud of the results that we drive. 5% average increase in conversion we've found over the past couple of years with almost treble the industry win rate and lots of experience over a wide range of different insurers and beyond.
I think just on that, Jake, the performance guarantee piece, within the first 4 months, you would see an ROI. The forecast will be that you will see an ROI on the program for a year within the first 4 months in most cases. Unless you are selling one policy a year for £5, you should see very good results. But yeah, drop Jake a message and can start looking at building out those cases. But crucially, this also gives you a kind of out of the box business case to go and take to the business and say that we want to be upping our experimentation game. This is how we propose we're going to do it. We've got partners in this who are going to take risks with us, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay. So we've got 10 minutes left, which is great. I'm just going to have a quick look at the Q&A. Feel free to pop anything in there. Tom, yes, we're more than happy to share the slides after the call. So that's fine. If anyone else has any questions, please do pop it in the chat. We'll wait another couple of minutes for them to come through. I'll open the chat as well, just in case. Chat or Q&A, absolutely fine. Wait a minute, and if not, I hope everyone has a lovely Halloween. Yeah, very scary stuff. Performance in insurance.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. What's favorite typical CRO experiment to run? Let's answer that each. For me, I like testing the things that matter and that are going to be risky off the back of it. So anything that makes someone a little bit scared that they're going to run and there's heightened expectations on really do, excite me as a practitioner that's been doing this for over a decade. You want to do things that are quite innovative, that are either going to have a big positive impact or a big negative impact from there, which can be quite scary, particularly with insurance, working with compliance teams to get those through. But when they do work, it's really exciting. It can be really, industry leading at that point.
For me, it's anything landing page relevancy related. If you can make those landing pages relevant, you're sorting out the disconnect that often exists between inbound traffic and that onward experience, and solving problems at the top of the funnel means you've got a higher chance of more coming down and turning into book policies. So that would be, it's somewhere that we see very successful businesses doing well in, and we see a lot of scope for people to do better in.
Any examples of CTAs that work really well or stand out? For us, typically those that are directional tend to perform the best, but not always. So I'll give examples of negative lists from there. So instead of just continue, actually pointing to managing expectations of what that next step is. So instead of just continue, having go to your car details or go to X page from there, tend to be the best starting point. But it does vary based off where they are in the funnel and what they're trying to do, whether they're in the quote funnel, whether they're on a landing page. The experience is very different.
I think to sort of quantify that, measure them against simplicity and clarity. And if you achieve both of those things, like, is it simple to understand for anyone? Is it clear what they're going to do next? you're probably onto the right thing, but test it because it's somewhere that, as Jake said, whilst you can see those kind of 5% increases, you can see that go the other way when clarity is lost. So always worth wrapping up in an experiment, because it's something that's so simple but can cause quite big friction.
Yeah. Dealing with compliance teams that are scared of taking risks.
Love it.
Common one.
Love it.
I think there's an insurer on the call at the moment that we work with and have worked with for a long time, and we've seen a massive increase in the attitude to risk and through experimentation, and also the speed and velocity and volume of experiments that we're able to run by including compliance at the beginning as we're talking about ideas, rather than sending it to them through approval, being able to talk them through a bulk of experiments at the start, to say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're trying to do, this is why. Are there any blockers that you see? And if there are, we don't invest the time in them. If they're completely going to ruin the hypothesis, if they are not, then we can obviously crack on. And that compliance step, they've already seen the concept, so it's very, very quick. They can just tick it. And if they're minor, we can work around them together, which is important, which then means that we can go through and tick as well. Compliance teams are so busy and regularly understaffed off the back of that, which means that, again, they tend to push back in terms of being brought into meetings for every single experiment, but actually half hour and an hour every month is very time efficient for them, and the impact that will have on your experimentation roadmap and just overall performance is massive.
I've got very little to add to that, other than from a platform perspective, the only personal identifiable information we collect is IP address. So a lot of the time when you're talking about the personalization side of things, there's a bit of a hesitancy, because it's, what about PII? What about compliance around that side of things? And actually, this is all information that people have given to us, and what we're doing is serving to make those things more relevant. They could experience that version of the site naturally, but all we're doing is, changing images to people like them. The risk from a compliance perspective for those sorts of tests is extremely low. And yeah, we find that once, as Jake said, once you've got them on side and they understand that the risk is actually low, like if the marketing team chose to put a picture of a young couple versus an old couple as their headline image, is that actually going to change the way that the compliance team would view the site? Almost certainly not. If you serve one variant versus another, if someone's told you that they're older or younger, does that make any difference? And often, once you've had that rational conversation, we find that insurers do come on side, particularly when they're shown the risks of not doing anything, the risks of getting it wrong, and the benefits of the uplift.
Yeah, we're all people at the end of the day, which helps in that matter as well. So yeah, quickly running out of time. One last thing, just want to point you to. So same time, same place, same day next week. We're running a webinar that tackles the question around what do you do about rising costs of PPC, and how can you make the most of that as well. How you combine both CRO efforts but also PPC efforts around that as well. So if you want more information of that, you can find it on our website, through our LinkedIn. Please do join. Really interesting content within there through another partner, Kinase PPC agency, that we're working with. But also we will include a link to that off the back when we send the presentation and recording from there. But no, it's been very nice to speak to you all. Anything else from you, Stu?
Not from me, no. Just thank everyone for spending the time today, and yeah, intelligent questions. Hopefully we've provided you something useful.
Yes, very much hope so. Well, thank you very much for all your time. Enjoy Halloween. Hope you get lots of sweets.
Yeah. Cheers all.
Thanks. Bye.